What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Victory Podcast. This week we have on Michael Robinson. You might know him from the NFL Network, or maybe the Big Ten Network, or maybe Fox Sports Radio. You can find him at therealmikerob.com, and he's also Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at realmikerob. Now, Michael, before all these jobs that he has now, played in the NFL for 8 years, mostly as a fullback between the Seahawks and the 49ers. But before that, he was a multi-positional athlete at Penn State coming out of Virginia. So Michael dives into his story all the way through picking Penn State among all the other colleges, the NFL days, and getting into communications, plus what he's also doing now. So without any further ado, here is a conversation with Michael Robinson. Thanks so much for coming on to talk a little bit about your journey and your career.
Thank you, brother.
Looking back at your playing days at Penn State, I mean, your senior year, you absolutely crushed being a dual threat quarterback. But before that, they had you at tailback, quarterback, split end, half. I mean, how did you navigate sort of getting to that spot where you're now the guy and the quarterback when they had moved you all over, for 4 years? Like, what was the conversations of how they were going to use you, and how did that evolve over time?
Yeah, man. I was a guy that was a jack of all trades. So, a lot of people think that's a good problem to have. When I was going through my college days, I thought that was a terrible problem to have. But it was all good. It actually helped me and helped me be more sustained in the National Football League, because it was truly the more that I could do. But the issues that I was having was everywhere they put me, I ended up being the best player at that position that we had on the team. So it was like, I remember Joe calling me into his office a couple of times, like, man, you're our best quarterback, but if you're a quarterback, who are you going to throw it to? You're our best receiver as well, and there are times you're our best running back, or guy with the ball in his hands. So the trick was figuring out a way to use my talents the best way that we possibly could, and it kind of culminated in my senior year, being the quarterback outright by myself. And getting some speed at the wide receiver position, and some young freshmen that truly took college football by storm that year.
Yeah, I mean, you played all over, fifth in the Heisman as a dual threat quarterback too. What was it like for you, like having to bounce around for those positions to know all of them? Did you think it helped you out as a quarterback just because you knew kind of what everyone was going to be timing wise, and you had to play a little bit of the position too, so you were able to know, all right, I got to hit this spot on this mark?
Yeah, I think more than anything, it helped me with being able to communicate. So when I was playing wide receiver, when I was playing running back, being able to communicate with our quarterback at the time, Zach Mills, just being able to tell him what I see, knowing what he's seeing from the quarterback position. So better being able to communicate. And then when I was a quarterback, my last year by myself, being able to take the young wide receivers and just talk their language. I knew, that sometimes that my ball, when I threw it out for an example, sometimes came out low, and we had a crest on our field. And I knew, because I ran so many outs in Beaver Stadium, I knew exactly what the ball looked like coming out. So I was better able to communicate with those guys. Hey guys, when you get your head turned around, get your eyes down low, because my ball actually sinks a little bit more, just to get a better understanding of what those guys were going through.
Now, can you talk a little bit about, playing for Joe Pa and the legacy that he had football wise with, what he was able to build there, and ultimately why you were recruited to Penn State, and why you ultimately chose Penn State?
Yeah, I ultimately chose Penn State because, Joe Paterno didn't lie to me. I'm not one of those who know much about Coach Paterno. I knew that he was a great coach up in the Northeast, had some great players. But one thing I did know was that he valued education. And then when I got a chance to meet him and talk to him and interact with him, it truly was all that. I can remember days at Penn State where it just wasn't all about football. It was days where he can see that I was down, maybe because of some things going on at home, and he would say, "Hey, look, man, like, you don't have to practice today." And I'm like, "What? I'm here for football, and you telling me I don't have to practice today?" But there were some things that just meant more than football to Coach Paterno. So that's going to always be his legacy to me. Before he passed away, I was, talking to him on a weekly basis, even after he got fired from Penn State because of the Jerry Sandusky scandal. I was talking to him on a weekly basis, just kind of getting information. And I know a lot of people have their different about state and things like that. But I knew Jerry, I knew Coach Paterno. And even when I talked to Coach Paterno, as soon as everything kind of hit the fan, and he was just like, Mike, I've known this guy for over 30 years. And I just had no idea. And I think people just have to understand Coach Paterno grew up in the 1920s, like he was born in the 20s. Some of these things that Jerry got convicted of doing, this stuff was taboo in his mind. He couldn't. I don't even know if he had a clear understanding of what everything was really, everything that was going on. And something else, Mike McQuarrie, the coach that supposedly had seen something in the locker room and things like that. Just talking to Coach Paterno was like, when he came and talked to me the next day, he really didn't say anything. And so, because I didn't really know what he was talking about, I just handed it over to the athletic director and the head of campus police. And he said, Mike, and I kind of just wiped my hands with it. I didn't really think any much more of it until I started to hear even more damning stories about Jerry Sandusky. Sure. So it was definitely a tough issue, especially being in the National Football League. You're in locker room, so you get a lot of jokes when all of those things kind of happen. But yeah, my foundation was shaking when all of those things went down. But I'm just glad that we've kind of turned the corner, and now the football program is definitely headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, from Bill O'Brien to what Coach Franklin's done now, I mean they're clicking.
They've had to, and quite frankly, I kind of helped with some of the coaching searches where I was kind of just talking to officials that were doing the search, and we looked at a lot of people before we ended up getting Bill O'Brien. And to me, I think Bill O'Brien was the perfect guy right after Coach Paterno, but right before Coach Franklin. It was a sense of realness with him. He understood how to deal with adversity, and I just think his personality was the perfect personality to have going through that tough time.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. One other question I did have for you about your Penn State days is, you come out and you have 2 degrees. I mean, you're able to have an advertising PR degree. I think like a year later, you got your journalism degree. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty obvious, hindsight being 2020, hey, that must have been all lined up. But, as far back as being, 20, 21, 22 years old, did you always have a goal of, I want to get into sports, as a personality, member of the media?
Yeah. So, and I always tell this story. I had a coach. First of all, I run youth football here in the state of Virginia. Again, we talk about football from a non-genetic standpoint. But I had a coach when I was about 9 years old tell me, I was a quarterback at the time. I was in the huddle. I was talking to my team, and I remember him pulling me out of the huddle and saying, Mike, like, you have to watch what you say to people. Like you really, really have to watch what you say to people, because whenever you talk, everybody in the huddle shuts up and listens. I'm the head coach, and there are times when I talk and I can't get anybody to shut up. You know what I mean? And I never lost that principle in my head. And so I thought a great sense of responsibility went along with that. And so my whole goal was, if I can't play football, I still want to be able to talk about it. I still want to be able to communicate with people. And then I just grew a love for communication at Penn State. A big reason why I went to Penn State is because when I was on my visit, they had all the College of Communications broke out, everything for me. You know what I mean? They had, all the banners and all of those things. And I acted like I was sick, and I went back to my hotel. So they shut it down. And then about 2 hours later, I walked back out and I went back to the College of Communications just because I wanted a real sense. And I had a regular sophomore student walk me around, me and my brother around, and basically talk me through why he was in the College of Communications. And I thought that was fascinating. I thought, if I could know enough about the field that I wanted to go into, like this kid did, I'd be all right. And education was always big to me, because I knew that at any time the game of football can be taken away. So that's something that I learned at a very, very young age. And so I was always I always had this parallel track. As I was chasing this football dream, I was also chasing a broadcasting dream at the same time.
Yeah, and we'll get into it in a couple minutes with your Seahawks career too. But that ability to speak and have people listen, your demeanor and when people are around you is big. And I have a note here: you were captain 6 of the 8 years when you played. That speaks to your ability to command, whether it be the huddle at a fullback position or wherever it may be, and that people will listen to you.
Yeah, man. I guess it's a gift and a curse, right? Like, there's been times I've been put in some real crazy situations, always being a leader, whether it's, one time we had some young guys, taking Adderall and all those things when we were with the Seahawks. And I remember Coach Carroll coming in to the team meeting room and saying, okay, we got a drug problem. Mike, handle it. Coaches, out of here. And I'm like, what do you want me to do, man? Like, I'm not trained for this, but I take that responsibility very seriously.
Yeah, it's the trust they have in you, right, to be able to handle it and not have to take it from a coaching perspective.
Absolutely.
So we talk about your NFL career a little bit. You are drafted by the 49ers in 2006, 4th round. How long did you figure out until you were going to be the halfback now? Because you were at the quarterback and now you're switching to the running back position. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah. So my goal was always to play in the National Football League, not be a quarterback in the National Football League. And I think sometimes, the rubber meets the road for some athletes, and you have to make a decision. Sometimes it's defensive back or wide receiver. Sometimes it's football or baseball, as in Kyler Murray. Who seems like he's making the football decision, but that was my goal, to play in the National Football League, and I wanted the opportunity to make as much capital, as much money as possible, to give myself the biggest head start on life that I possibly can. And all I asked teams to do was give me an opportunity to play quarterback. Just look, watch me take a snap, watch me drop back. Watch me throw. If you don't like it, then I'll play any position that you tell me to play. But I felt like I owed myself that opportunity, and I was. When I got with the 49ers, North Turner knows me, and I went with Alex Smith and, back him up for a couple of practices and all of those things. They thought that I could be a better asset at the running back position, and so I went ahead and did that. I had some background in that from playing it in college. The only difference being, in college, I never practiced at any other position other than quarterback. I led my team in receiving yards before, second on the team in rushing yards before, but I've never practiced in college. I never practiced as a running back, and I never practiced as a wide receiver. What you saw on game day was me just kind of making it happen in my head. You know what I mean? Half of the time I didn't know what position I was playing until Coach Paterno did his Thursday radio show, and he was like, "Oh, we're going to use Mike more at the running back position this week." And I'm like, "Okay, well then I guess I'll be carrying the ball a little bit more." But that's how I made the transition to halfback. I remember in 2007, Troy Smith, quarterback for the Ohio State Buckeyes in the National Football League. We played the Baltimore Ravens, and after the game, he ran up to me and said, "Dude, what are you doing? Why are you playing halfback? You're part of the reason why I always wanted to play quarterback." And it's just like, well, you got drafted in the 6th or 7th round. I got drafted in the 4th. I made the decision to maximize my earning potential at this particular time in my life, and that kind of led my decision.
And just hearing that, I don't know if you can really speak on it. I don't know if you know or not, but do you have any thoughts on Tim Tebow not making that decision? He was ride or die quarterback, but clearly had some physical attributes. Maybe he could have been a good H-back or had a different role in the NFL. Do you think he, do you know anything about that decision?
Well, at the time I had reached out to Tim, like, Tim, look, holla at me, man. Like, I can teach you to be an H-back. You know what I mean? I thought he was perfectly built for it, but I'm also in the school of thought that if you have a passion, a love to do something, man, there's nobody that can really talk you out of that. Now, there is other dynamics to this, that the fact that he was going to get an opportunity to actually throw passes in a game, as opposed to guys like myself and Pat White and DJ Shockey, guys who won BCS bowl games in 2006, had to possibly make position switches. Now you can make your own assumptions as to why Tim Tebow was given the opportunity to actually throw passes, and guys like us, they tried to make us change positions. Think about this: Warren Moon when he first came into the National Football League, they made him play wide receiver. He had to go to Canada to show them, hey, guys, I can throw the football and I'm smart enough to actually handle the quarterback position. Now, again, you can use your own faculties to kind of come up with your own assumptions as to why those dynamics still exist in the National Football League today.
Yeah, and I think was it Terrell Pryor? I know he had like a shoulder issue, but like Braxton Miller. I mean, there's been a lot of guys. Those two are just off the top of my head, but I mean,
yes, sir. Forced to make the position switch. That's why I was so happy to see a guy like Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, those guys get the opportunity, man. But I think
Lamar
Jackson, absolutely, and they're getting the opportunity because our amateur system is producing guys with that skill set a lot more than the Tom Brady's. It's just harder to find that guy, man. I mean, those are dominant guys, which is the reason why they're able to play till they're 105.
Now, I want to transition to, you go to the 49ers and then you go to Seattle. What made Seattle successful? Can you just dive us into that locker room a little bit and just talk about the culture, talk about the coaches, talk about like what made you guys ultimately be a Super Bowl contender?
I think the fact that Pete Carroll did not have success the first time he was in the National Football League as a head coach was probably one of the biggest factors because he made the right decisions during our time there to get us to the Super Bowl. I think that had a tremendous effect. I don't even know if I can even quantify it, the effect that his experience the first time as a head coach had on his experience the second time being a head coach. I also think he has a philosophy major, so he always knows how to push certain buttons to motivate guys to get the best versions of themselves all the time. Pete is very much of a player coach. He used the fact that guys like myself had attitudes, kind of felt disrespected, that we weren't looked at as starters at the teams that we were coming from. Guys like myself, Chris Clemens, Red Bryant. He was already with the Seattle Seahawks, but he really wasn't getting the love that we wanted him to get. Those attitudes of kind of the kind of cast off guys of the National Football League, we kind of came together. Pete kind of got us together and with that mentality, man. And
yeah. So when you say player coach, like what does that actually mean? Like I know what a player coach is in the sense of like, he caters to the players, but in your sense, I'm talking about when Pete was a player's coach, like you say he kind of let you be your own person. He didn't so much put you guys in a container and say, you have to act this way, you have to be this way. Is that what you kind of mean in a sense of a player coach?
Yeah. He was able to, he listens to you.
Yep.
You're able to communicate, speak the language. I mean, the fact that Richard Sherman is the personality and the celebrity that he is right now has a lot to do with Richard Sherman, but it also has a lot to do with the fact that he played for a coach who allowed that to manifest and be out there. I mean, there were times we would have meetings, me and Coach would have meetings just to talk about personality dynamics in the locker room. I mean, I had never experienced that in football where a coach was concerned or it was at the forefront of his thoughts, the personality dynamics of a locker room. I thought it was fascinating. I thought the fact that he instilled a principle in us to treat every single rep like a championship rep, so that when a real championship comes, it's just everyday football to you. We would always have music at practice, celebrities show up, all of these types of things. So that practice was the best practice we could ever have. So that the games would be a lot easier. So I think Pete Carroll had a lot to do with the success and still has a lot to do with the success of the Seattle Seahawks to this day.
Yeah, I mean, you paint a pretty clear picture of how that can really affect the locker room. And there's just so many people that try the Belichick route, and it just doesn't really work out nearly as well as it has for the Patriots. But I want to ask you about your decision to retire on top. But before that, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. 8 years in the NFL, of course, 6 as captain. You started as a running back, but you moved to fullback. And from what I could tell, that was mostly based on an injury. You kind of jumped up because you were this jack of all trades that could do it. And of course, you did it really well with the 49ers. Do you feel like you kind of got pigeonholed into being a fullback and then you never really had a chance to jump back to running back or maybe play a little receiver? I mean, not that you have any regrets at all, but do you think that, maybe it would have been nice if like you had the opportunity to have tried to do some more things because you were so good at it?
Absolutely. I think about that stuff all the time, man. But it's something that you
I didn't want to put words in your mouth.
No, it's all good. You can't get it back. And I have thought about it. I always think about if instead of being drafted in 2006, I was drafted in 2018 or 2019, I'd probably be a quarterback, a first round pick or a second round pick at the quarterback position, just because of the nature of how the nature of our game has changed so far. I mean, so much in just a short period of time. But yeah, I think about that. But I'll also always say my personality is that of a fullback. So you got to think, man, fullbacks do dirty work, man. A lot of the times they're the reason why a back gets to the second level and is able to use his genetic ability to get to a touchdown. But yet the fullback position is not going to be glorified in paper clippings or anything like that. You know what I mean? They're going to always be a role player. You're going to always play. You're going to always be between 40 and 48 on the roster. You know what I mean? You're going to always be fighting for your job and things like that. And the reason why I say that matched my personality is because I remember having conversations with Pete Carroll saying, look, bro, stop calling that. Like, I don't like that. I know you're trying to say, look, be like Mike, look at our captain and how he's focused and how he's, doing the right things. But for me to truly get your philosophy to permeate through the locker room, I can't be viewed as a front office guy. I can't be viewed as a guy that's basically just being like the head coach, i.e. Ben Roethlisberger. But that's a whole nother conversation. I don't know if y'all want to talk about that right now. I've been talking about Ben all year for the last 2 years, saying he's the big reason why Pittsburgh's been struggling. But that's a whole nother conversation. But I think the mentality of the fullback doing the grunt work, but not getting the praise for it just kind of fit my personality and who I am.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah, I mean that people say fullback is a dying position. It's too bad too, because you see these like New England with Devlin and Anthony Sherman on Kansas City. These teams that are winning are still using fullbacks and are still using fullback effectively in the power game.
Well, that's how I look at it. And then you guys have got to also think, as these spread offenses continue to start to dominate our league, linebackers and defenses are going to adjust too. You're already starting to see the smaller linebacker come into play. And if you look at the Kansas City game in the AFC Championship, the game was won at the fullback and linebacker position. Watch 100%. The run game. And the reason why a big reason why Bob Sutton, amongst some other things, got fired is because they never adjusted. They were a gap short the entire game, and he could never figure it out.
Yep. And then, and like you said, it ultimately led to his demise getting out of there in Kansas City. I want to talk about the Super Bowl, and I want you to talk about your experience winning the Super Bowl, going out on top. You guys didn't just win that game. You dominated that game. Can you talk about a little bit, maybe about the game plan and just going into the Super Bowl?
Yeah. We knew that game, that the Denver Broncos was a Peyton Manning offense dominated type of a team. And what I mean by that is their special teams their kickoff team only covered 12 kicks all season because they played in Denver. Most of those kicks go out of the back of the end zone. And out of those 12 kicks, 4 of them went for touchdowns. Okay. So a quarter of the kicks that you covered went into the end zone. See, nobody looks at these stats when you have 2 weeks to prepare for a team. This stuff comes up. So we knew all Percy Harvin had to do was touch the football, and he would take it back for a touchdown. Another stat that Dan Quinn shared with the entire team during that week was Peyton Manning on passes under 12 yards, he was like 90% completion. Under 12 yards was like 8, which means his arm strength was dying, and all we had to do was press his receivers. They had no ability to do double moves. And so just having this information allowed our defense, special teams, and offense from a game planning standpoint to go out there offensively. We played big boy football and beat them up. Decided we wanted to run the football, hold on to the ball, make our plays in the passing game, and just keep that offense off the field. Defensively, most teams, they used to play Peyton Manning by moving their safeties or changing the defense late in the play clock So he didn't have an opportunity to change the offensive plays, right? What we did was we stayed in cover 3 defense and said, come get some. We're going to hit your ass all day. Excuse me, can I say that?
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
My bad.
Absolutely. No,
but that's basically what we said. Come on, come get some. And if you notice how, Cam Chancellor laid the boom down on Demaryius Thomas and all of those things, with the safety being the first play of the game. We knew. I mean, I remember watching tape with Marshawn that week after the NFC Championship game. We watched one quarter from one of the Denver Broncos. I cut it off. We started laughing, and we didn't watch any more tape. We said, this game does not have to be close.
No kidding, right? Wow. What a stat, too, 90% under. So, I mean, that tip-off alone gives your defense, an already talented defense, the leeway to just go play. Don't think, just play. And, they did fast, too.
You can sit at 7 or 8 yards and play downhill, man. I guarantee you, if you ask Richard Sherman, dude, if Denver would have did a double move on you in that Super Bowl, would you have been beaten? He said, yeah, I would have been beaten 50 times.
Yeah, I remember him after the game. Yeah, I remember him after the game. He made a comment about that, how if they made a double move, any slant and goes, hitch and goes, whatever it may be, he was toasted. And it's crazy that they didn't figure that out as far as like trying to take that shot. But like to your point of what you said, though, his arm strength maybe wasn't there where he couldn't hit that throw or, throw the ball 40 to 50 yards downfield.
Exactly. I mean, look at the Denver Broncos and after that they were defensive dominated, and if you don't have Cam Newton in that Super Bowl and maybe another quarterback, they may not have won that one.
Now, obviously that win just so big. How easy of a decision was it for you to walk out at that moment? The highest of the highs. How much you thought about it going into that game, or was it just something that kind of you came to that conclusion maybe it was weeks, months afterwards?
Well, I knew at the beginning of the season that it was going to be my last season. I had got cut earlier in that season. I had my liver and my kidneys failed based off of medicine that I took with the Seattle Seahawks, and I missed the first 6 weeks of the season.
Down 30 pounds?
That I wish I was down 30 pounds. I was down more like 50 pounds. I went from 252 pounds at the beginning of training camp to 195 pounds within 2 weeks. And if you guys know, losing that much weight is fatal. An allergic reaction to some of these anti-inflammatories that doesn't happen twice in somebody's life. And so the fact that I had already had one meant that, and I wasn't a natural fullback, I had to put on weight and I had to take certain things to make sure that I didn't just get beat up physically. And so when a doctor comes in and tells you, we're not recommending you take more than 2 Tylenol ever for the rest of your life, playing a painful position like the fullback position, and you're not a natural fullback, you play quarterback and a lot of other skill positions, it makes playing the fullback position a little tougher to play. And so I didn't want to put my health in jeopardy. I knew we had a dope team. I did not know if we were going to go back the next year, which we ended up going back, which I wasn't a part of that team. I just wanted to be a part of it, and I knew if we could win a Super Bowl, that this will be my last season.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the health stuff aside, I mean, it's set up for a perfect exit, and and obviously, again, hindsight being 2020, everything is sort of worked out. But it's pretty obvious, right? Pretty much anyone knows that cares about football that you're on NFL Network, you're on the Big Ten Network, you do the Fox radio show, but you also have Excel to Excellence. Can you talk a little bit about some of the stuff that maybe not everyone knows about because it's not obvious when they're watching you talk sports?
Yeah, I created a foundation. I'm sorry. What's up, dog? That's my son. He up in here saying what's up. I created a foundation, Excel to Excellence. Basically, we create programs and platforms to get, to get in an environment to get kids in higher education. Our signature program, Team Excel, it's a fantasy football type platform where the students are the actual players in the game. They get a score each week, based weekly GPA and weekly community service. They're put in groups. They win prizes each week and all of those types of things to kind of incentivize them to do better in school and hold them accountable for their own success. Then I created another foundation, E2E Youth Football, or Excel to Excellence Youth Football Foundation. We administer leagues here in the state of Virginia. We're one of the biggest leagues, youth football leagues here in the state of Virginia. We have about close to 4,000 kids underneath our umbrella. We run a year program, spring and fall, That does not necessarily mean that I endorse year-round football, but there are communities and people in the communities that I serve that think football is their only way out of the struggle. So we want to provide a safe environment for them to play football. And we don't talk about football in terms of genetics. We never talk about football in terms of how fast a kid can run, how hard he can hit, or how far he can throw a football. We talk about the brain processes. We talk about when that quarterback sees a three or identifies a three deep defense and notices the flat coverage. One's a linebacker, one's a safety. I throw at the linebacker side because the linebacker has tighter hips and not as flexible as the safety. Well, that process in my head is coding. Somebody at Google gets paid a lot of money to build websites and code, but just our babies that have been doing this since they were 5 and 6 years old, we just don't know the language. If somebody taught us the language, we could code too, like at probably 10 years old. So we try to provide resources to our organizations and to our community at large so that they start to identify these things, guys. It's a 1.6 chance that our kids will have an opportunity to play in the National Football League. 1.6. So the stats tell us it's almost guaranteed you won't make it. And so you have to get more out of football than just the opportunity of glitz and glamour. Football is a skill builder or a skill identifier, and that's how we should be talking about the game.
Yeah, and that's something we preach here at Victory too, is like we're all about, you see the IQ above my head, like we're all about the learning of the game and teaching the football education part of the game, not so much like, as you mentioned, the genetic part of the game. Have you had any pushback as far as, how football is in the media and just taking the lashings that it is? Have you had any pushback or is it more of just, like you said, trying to get kids involved and get kids in the game as opposed to the contact of it, the concussions of it, and everything that they're talking about?
You always have some pushback, and I spend most of my week talking to parents about just the importance of team sports, right? And I'm in football, and so I talk about football, and again, the brain processes that are happening every single down in football that translate to real life situations that can translate to success in life. Yeah. When you look at youth sports, the number one concussion sport is girls soccer, right? And then boys soccer, and then you go into football. Just because of the numbers, it starts to pop up. God knows I talked to a lot of people in the National Football League to get a hold on this, right? I don't think that the game has a concussion problem. I think the game has a bad coaching problem, right? Yes. And at the very lowest levels of youth football, we allow a lot of the AYFs, the Pop Warners, the UFYLs, a lot of these national groups to make parents pay for play, and then they don't really provide an adequate certification process for the coaches. So you have guys who sit at home all day and play Madden and think that they can get in front of these 8 and 9-year-olds and have them run into each other all day because they think that makes them tough. And we just, especially at E2E Youth Football, we just try to tell them the fact that a kid is out there means that he has a little bit of toughness about him. He wouldn't have came out if he didn't have any toughness about him. So you don't have to continue to try to get that out of a kid. And then a parent sits and watches practice and they see kids line up 20 yards from each other and run into each other all day. You lose the parent as a fan, you lose the kid as a fan, and then you lose the supporter. And I know owners like to hear about the bottom line. You lose the possible supporter of that bottom line later on down in life. Baseball, they have a hold on the Little League World Series. They went back to the source. Basketball, they created a tournament of champions of their AAU champions in Vegas. Again, they have a hold on the source of their sport. I'm continually pushing the Troy Vincent, Roger Goodell, and the National Football League. We need to do something and have a hold on the source of our sport, which is Little League football. We need to have a certification process to make sure that our coaches across the country are providing the adequate resources so that our game continues the success that is enjoyed the last couple of, really since its inception, right? Yeah. So we have to go back to the source, and that's what I've been pushing.
Yeah, I'm sure you feel my frustrations too, because I'm the same way. It drives me crazy when I see a coach, whether it be on any social media post, he's sitting there holding a video of kids doing hitting drills. It's like, put the phone down and coach the kid up, because he's not doing the drill right. It drives me crazy.
And coach the kid. You're yelling at the kid.
Yeah.
Block somebody, tackle him. And, I always pull a coach to the side of my league and I say, we have almost 600 coaches in our league. And I pull a coach to the side and I say, hey, guy, Did you teach the kid how to block?
It's an
Did
empty
you
coaching point.
literally show the kid how to tackle? Because if you didn't, yelling ain't doing nothing but pissing everybody off.
Exactly. Yeah. And to say tackle them, that's an empty coaching point. You're not.
That's what I'm saying. Show them, teach them something.
Yep.
You know, that's the name of the game.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we're very much on the same page. So, you know, anything we can do in the future to help you amplify your message, you know, obviously it's right down our alley as well.
Yep.
But
thank you guys. I appreciate you guys.
I know that we're getting right up against it. Class is about to start. I just have a couple quick fire questions I need to ask you. A little thing we call the gauntlet. Yeah. Michael, what's most important, the number one offense or number one defense?
For me, it's going to always be the number one defense, right? And it showed throughout the playoffs, and it definitely showed in the Super Bowl. If a team can't score, they just can't win. It's too hard to play. It's too hard to get 11 guys collectively. And again, our game is going to more of a passing league, meaning the offensive line has to block well. The conditions in the environment has to be well. The receiver has to be feeling good, running a good route. The running back has to pick up the blitzes. The quarterback has to throw the ball accurately. He can't have any pressure on. Look at all the factors that I just named for that to work.
Yep. Right?
Defense, keep everything in front of me. Don't let them get across this white line.
Yep.
That's simple.
What's the saying? Throwing the football is two out of three things can go wrong, and only one thing can go right. You know,
and only one thing can go right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, looking back, not that you wish you would have done anything differently, but was there ever a player or coach you just would have wished you had the chance to have played alongside or play for?
Bill Belichick. I mean, and people can say what they want about him. People can talk about they win too much. It's a reason why they win too much. Bill Belichick. It's a reason why Tom Brady has elevated his game so much that now he's probably the best quarterback, best player to ever play this game, is because Bill Belichick coaches him like everybody else on that team. And so Tom feels the need to challenge himself every single year because he knows Bill will put another quarterback in there. Like, dude, we're not tied to you. I know you're great and all of that, but I have to coach you just like everybody else. And quite frankly, I think if Bill Belichick ever wanted to run for some type of political office, I think the country may be better. I don't know. He's successful.
You know, when you talked about the Seahawks team, where you had guys that had a chip on their shoulder, Bill somehow, from everyone we talked to, all the ex-Patriots that come on here, doesn't matter. You always have a chip on their shoulder, and he makes them believe that they're the underdog. And he gets these outcast guys, veterans that come in and they buy in, and it's sort of like that always feels like it's a key ingredient in teams that put it all together.
Yeah, and I think what's unique with Bill Belichick, his ability to, even as the championship banners are going up in the background, each year he's able to tell each team, last year don't mean nothing. You guys ain't nothing. We still got to go reinvent ourselves, and we got to go win a championship. And they have the longest seasons every single year. Mm-hmm. And so his ability to do that is simply phenomenal.
Now, was there ever a pregame ritual that you stuck to, whether it was college or NFL?
Oh, man. No, not really. In the National Football League, like probably my last 3 years, every home game, I would go over to the facility and get a full workout in the morning. When I say workout, not just lifting weights. I would hit blocking sleds. I would put on helmet and shoulder pads. I would get a lather at like 7:30 in the morning for a 1 o'clock game. I'm nuts about that type of stuff, guys. I just got to get myself going. Yeah. And I had to weigh 244 on game day. I could not weigh 245. I could not weigh 243. I had to weigh 244 on game day, and I was always between 235 and 237 after the game. If I weigh more than that, I did not work hard enough.
So I got to ask, just out of curiosity, is that for just to get, like you said, to get yourself going mentally, or is it physically just get your body warmed up that you were doing all that?
I think as I got older, it started being just to get my body warmed up. But also, guys, I've mentioned it a couple of times on the show today. I wasn't a natural fullback. I'm not a natural 250-pound guy. So I had to always keep my body ready for lack of better words, war. I had to always keep my body ready for the one-on-one personal contact.
All right. And last one for you, Michael. I know you're an analyst for both college and NFL. A couple of storylines that you're really looking forward to watch play out over the course of the offseason, whether it is Big Ben and how Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, that dynamic has essentially fallen apart, or is there one Big Ten team that like you're really looking to see how they sort of, whether because it's Urban Meyer left and they kind of have to pick up the pieces. What for you are you most looking forward to just watching through the offseason or even, that next year itself?
Couple of different things, guys. First and foremost, I'm always watching Big Ten football, and it's always Penn State. Okay, so you ain't gotta look at no other ways. And my whole thing is, and I've talked to Coach Franklin about this. At some point, we have to start winning the big games at Penn State. I mean, the big games. A couple of years ago, we won big, but the last couple, like we beat the teams we're supposed to beat. But the big games where there's a 50-50 chance we win. For whatever reason, we don't play as well as we should play. And then you look at the National Football League, for the Pittsburgh Steelers to be as successful as they have been over the last 20, 30 years, to have this type of drama, to have your general manager go out publicly yesterday and said Ben Roethlisberger has 52 children underneath him. For him to say Ben Roethlisberger has the authority to call me out, and what? What?
Yeah.
I'm very interested in seeing how that's going to play out. Because I've been saying for the last 2 years, Ben Roethlisberger is the essence of all the issues up there in Pittsburgh. And this Kyler Murray situation, is he truly in this to play football? I don't know. I'm interested to go to the combine next week, watch him, see him. The smaller guy, I'm looking at if he does play in the National Football League, will the team that picks him up totally do what Baltimore did and just say, you know what, we're just going to go all in on your style of play? Because if you don't, and you kind of do a halfway thing with him, you can stunt this kid's growth. So those are the three things I'm looking for.
Yeah. And just real quick on Kyler Murray, one thing I loved was, it's always, when you get a quarterback 5'10", 5'11", it's like, oh, he's too short, the batted balls. It's like, well, you look at Drew Brees. And then you look at the guys who have the balls batted down, and it's like they're 6'6", 6'5". It's more style than it is a height thing. So it seems like the NFL is kind of getting over that hurdle. But we'll see. But in any event, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time with us. For all of our listeners, it's therealmikerob.com. Twitter is @realmikerob. Facebook, Real Mike Rob. And Instagram, real_Mike_Rob. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Oh, man, nothing but peace and love, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. To all your listeners, as I always tell the people that listen to my podcast and listen to the things that I'm on, if you want to change your situation in life, you got to change your mental vibration. The universe is mental. Peace, guys.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Michael.